Hello and welcome to another video in our series of Twelfth Night analysis and discussion. We are now moving into Act 2, Scene 5, and I need to get my pointer ready. Here we go. Yeah, it's back. So here we are, Act 2, Scene 5. And we've now got, this scene is a really important one because this is what's known as the gulling of Malvolio. So this is a really important part of that storyline in the play, the additional subplot. We get the introduction here of Fabian. Who is this guy? We've never seen him before. We've got Fabian has appeared. Interesting character. Seems to be a bit of a hanger-on. Some productions will show him as another servant of the household. That's kind of logical. He's had a run-in the past with Malvolio for various things, most notably bear baiting. That was a very popular pastime, tormenting bears in Shakespeare's time. Of course, a very cruel practice, but they thought it was great entertainment, and it was also where all of the theatres were. You could go and see a play, bear baiting, prostitutes. They were all in the same part of town in Shakespeare's time when you go to London. So there's bear baiting is associated with actually having fun. Obviously it's not fun. Anyway, I've talked about bear baiting for ages now and I need to move on. So we have Fabian has also got a grudge against Malvolio. What's weird is that earlier on in the play, we had a reference to the idea of Feste joining in spying on Malvolio when they were going to trick him. And it's not, it's Fabian. So that's weird, isn't it? So we have this new character. Wouldst thou not be glad to have the niggardly, rascally sheep-biter come by some notable shame? To point this out as well, this word as well, sometimes you see some productions, there's a sharp intake of breath. It's not what people think it is at all. It has absolutely no connection to any racist word at all. A completely separate word. It doesn't get used anymore because it sounds like a racist word, and that's why it doesn't really get used anymore. But the word itself, and particularly Shakespeare writing it, there's zero connotations of anything racist. So sometimes people think that's a sign of racism in the play. It's not. It's really just the idea of it being an annoying person, and it has no connection at all to anything racist, this word, but obviously phonologically similar enough to shock audiences now. Sometimes it gets changed in productions for that reason alone. And that's enough of a reason, isn't it? And then we've got, he brought me here out of favour with my lady about a bear baiting here. So Fabian was obviously running a bit of a side hustle with a bit of bear baiting, a bit of gambling there, presumably. So Fabian joins in on this one. Then here comes a little bit on how now my metal of India. That's gold, metal of India. So Sir Toby, obviously Shakespeare is showing Sir Toby's high esteem that he holds Maria in. And Maria is the architect of this plan that they're going to trick Malvolio with now. Observe him for the love of mockery, for I know that it will make a contemplative idiot of him. Close in the name of jesting. So they've got to hide, they're going to spy on him. Malvolio comes in and he is walking around very pompously. He's very full of himself. He's enjoying a break, effectively, from his work. And you get the commentary from Toby, Fabian and Sir Andrew hiding out of the way, spying on Malvolio, because he's going to be embarrassing himself, even though Malvolio doesn't realise it. To be Count Malvolio. This is an interesting one for crossing boundaries. Malvolio has a fantasy about transcending his class and becoming Count Malvolio, marrying Olivia. This is a completely unrealistic fantasy, of course, as well for Malvolio, because Olivia's not really interested in him at all. But this is Shakespeare setting up the jokes for later on, like the humour, the comedy is being set up for later on, because there's this idea of Malvolio's got this vanity, where he's normally depicted as a much older character than Olivia. I think the implication in the play that he is older than Olivia, so he's very vain here to think that he's got any kind of chance with her at all. There is example for it. The Lady of the Straight She married the Yeoman of the Wardrobe. This seems to be based on a contemporary bit of context in Shakespeare's time, where I don't think all the details are known to this day. I think they're lost to time, but there obviously was a contemporary case of a servant marrying a noblewoman. So that did happen. So that's a little cultural reference for Shakespeare's audience of the time. So this is why he's got this fantasy of becoming Count Malvolio. Then he continues this fantasy. He's got this idea of having been 3 months married to her, sitting in my state, calling for my officers about me in my branched velvet gown, having come from a daybed where I have left Olivia sleeping. So there's obviously sexual connotations there about, well, no, you can do the rest. I'm not doing that. It's YouTube. I'm not going to say anything else. So you get all this commentary here of their shocked, angry responses there as well. A stone boat, that'll be a little catapult or a slingshot, as people incorrectly call them. Well, no, Americans call them slingshots correctly. Well, they know them as slingshots. It's not actually. I could go. I'm just about to go off on one about slingshots, and catapults, and yeah, Americans have got confused historically. I'm sorry, America. Yeah. Anyway, I'm not going to go on about that. But really, they're catapults, and a slingshot is actually something completely different. But anyway, so stone bow would be a catapult, or if you're American, slingshot, or if you don't know the British. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm moving on. Branched velvet gown. In Shakespeare's time, there were very strict rules about what different classes could wear, and that is representative of Malvolio transcending his class there. This would be an example of hypergamy, or hypergamy, I should try and say it correctly. Hyper and then Gamy, marrying into a higher social class. But this is just a fantasy of Malvolio's. And then to have the humour of state and after a demure travel of regard. All the language is very pompous here as well. It's very elevated language as Shakespeare's given Malvolio, where again he's crossing this class boundary in his imagination. He's then, he says, I know my place, as I would they should do theirs, to ask for my kinsman Toby. So he's got this fantasy again. He's risen above his fellow servants. He's moved beyond that. And my kinsman Toby, if he was married to Olivia, he would be related to Sir Toby through marriage, wouldn't he? Because Sir Toby is Olivia's uncle. So again, you get the angry response here as well. 7 of my people with an obedient start make out for him. I frown the while and perchance wind up my watch or play with my some rich jewel. So there's interesting things going on there. I've seen the Stephen Fry version plays this brilliantly with a bit of innuendo. Play with my, and then he hesitates, looks down, does some little comedy moves. I think that's brilliant. Interesting to see wind up my watch. That's actually really new tech in Shakespeare's time and an incredibly valuable item to have. If you've got a wind up watch in Shakespeare's time, you were really rich. And Elizabeth I was, I think, definitely the first person in England, maybe even in Europe, I don't know, I can't remember the exact fact, but she had a wristwatch, and that was even newer technology. But the idea of wearing it on your wrist. But anyway, I just find that kind of stuff interesting. You know me, if you've listened to my videos, you know what I'm like. I'll try and keep it under control here. I'll go off on one. So we have Malvolio then, this fantasy, I haven't highlighted this bit, but the idea is that Malvolio fantasises about ruling over Sir Toby and telling him, you must amend your drunkenness. You can't be drinking all the time. He's got this fantasy of he would be socially higher than Sir Toby. This is his fantasy there. He thinks he's got a chance with Olivia, a serious chance. Besides, you waste the treasure of your time with a foolish knight. That's me, I warrant you. So again, there's a bit of comedy there where Sir Andrew recognises himself, and the way that the line's written, it looks like he's celebrating the fact that he's been mentioned, but it's obviously for a derogatory reason there as well. I knew 'twas I, for many do call me fool. So at least Sir Andrew's got some level of self-awareness there. Now is the woodcock near the gin. This is a little animal metaphor we've got there as well, or an analogy. Same thing in this case. Both of them works. And then they find the letter. Now this is the letter that's been written by Mariah in the fake handwriting. It's a fake letter, an emulated handwriting of Olivia. And we have, these be her very C's, her U's, and her T's, and thus she makes her great P's. This is Shakespeare as a writer exploiting a sense of pragmatics. He's drawing on, again, we're on YouTube here, you can work this out yourself. He's alluding to Olivia's body, a particular part of her body, and think about, hopefully you've got it by there, but think about, ladies' parts and words for those parts, words that, or a word that contains C, U, T, and where she makes her great P's, and now you may have worked it out, and anyway, no, move on. Let's move on quickly. And this is all dramatic. The audience are all laughing. The idea, Malvolio has no idea that this is a fake letter. He takes it all at face value as well. He says, this is her handwriting. And there's comedy at his expense as well, because there's a sexual innuendo as well. By your leave, wax soft in the impressia, her Lucrece. So that is the ring she would use to, when you seal a letter, you melt the wax and you press, if you're a noble person, you press your ring with your house seal on it, and it's got effectively your family logo on it, your coat of arms on it. You press it in, and so it adds authenticity. So Mariah's gone to great extents to make this look like a real letter from Olivia. So that works very nicely there as well. And he reads it all as well, reads the letter, and it's kind of written fairly cryptically, possibly too cryptically for Malvolio, but he's not actually that clever. He thinks he is. MOAI doth sway my life, a fustian riddle. Excellent wench say. So there's a great little puzzle here. But is it too hard for Malvolio? There's actually a risk here. What dish of poison has she dressed him, and what wing the Staniel checks at it? He's a bit slow on the uptake to actually work out what this means. And it does seem to be a bit laboured, but there's comedy at Malvolio's expense because he's not as sharp as he thinks he is. If I can make that resemble something in me, softly, MOAI. Oh, I make up that he is now at a cold scent, so there's a danger they think he's not going to work out what this is about. Malvolio, why that begins my name. So, again, just like stating the obvious, but we're laughing at Malvolio's expense here. Some of this is derived from the fact that Malvolio, we've seen him as essentially a party pooper. He's been described as a type of Puritan. He doesn't like partying. He doesn't like drinking. He doesn't like fun, basically. He's presented in that way. And now we've got him as well. He's presented as someone who's got ambitions above his class. And so we're laughing at him as well because he looks ridiculous, because he thinks he's got a chance with Olivia and he actually has no chance at all. And yeah, so it's adding to the comedy, effectively. So it's quite laboured, his working out of it, but it's drawn out for this comedy purposes. And yet, to crush this a little, it would bow to me. And every one of those letters are in my name. So there's some thought the code is actually meant to be referring to Olivia, but I don't know where the M fits in with that. So there is a theory that Malvolio works out who it's from, but he doesn't work out in the way he was meant to work out what it was. But anyway, I don't like that theory. It seems to be Malvolio just mixed up. And considering that a lot of the play has names where names are connected, aren't they? So if you have Olivia, Malvolio, like these are partial anagrams. Viola, these are partial anagrams. So there's lots of things here about letters and words and names, things being jumbled up. Is one of the really famous lines. So he reads the letter. This fall into thy hand, revolve. I've seen a version of the play where Malvolio actually took that literally for extra comedy. He stood up and span round 360 degrees, which I thought was very funny. But whether it's meant like that or not doesn't really matter. But I appreciated that anyway. In my stars, I am above thee, but be not afraid. Consistent with that theme of the play. This greatness. Now, this is the really famous line from the play. This is used in everyday life. You'll see this in the news. You see this in news articles. It's used all over the place. And now you might say, no, I've never heard this before, but you're going to hear it again outside of this play. Now I've said it. Some point in your life, you're going to hear it more than once. Some are born great, some achieve greatness, and some of greatness thrust upon them. This is a very clever line. And I'm going to leave it at that. I'm not going to explain it. No, I'm joking. I will explain why it is. It's very, very, very clever. So we break it up into different bits. So there's lots of things going on with this. So if you look at it, Malvolio is being even made more of a fool of by this line, because if you look at it on a superficial level, it sounds like this is really flattering, doesn't it? It sounds like something impressive. Some are born great, some achieve greatness, and some have greatness thrust upon them. So structurally, what Shakespeare's done is, Shakespeare's created incrementum, as in an incrementum is the term that describes, like a build-up. So you've got the idea of greatness, and then greatness thrust upon it. Like the idea, there's a sense of gradients there where it seems to be getting more and more important. But this is only half of it, because what Shakespeare's done is he's actually presented it really as that's actually decremental. That's actually a decremental list. If you look at it, if you really think about what it means, each of those three phases, they're presented as improving. So in terms of, if you talk about rhetoric, as in the art of communication and speaking, it feels like there's a build-up. But actually, if you look at the meaning, these things get weaker each step. So if you think about it, some are born great. So they would love someone like Alexander the Great, the legendary figure from the ancient world, the Macedonian, and the massive empire. Some are born great. Some achieve greatness. So some in their life, they're not born great, but they do great things. And then the last one, some have greatness thrust upon them. There's a third type of person who they're not born great. They don't actually achieve any greatness. They just get given their status. So it's a very clever line, and it fits in with what we've talked about in the past about these ideas about inversions in the play. There's lots of different crossovers and things being turned on their head. It fits in with Twelfth Night as a festival as well, doesn't it? Where we talk about role reverse and all of that. Very, very clever lines. Some are born great, some achieve greatness, and some have greatness thrust upon them. Easy to remember as well. Very easy to learn that line as well. Very, very clever. Very clever. Anyway, I've said enough about it being clever. The Fates open their hands. So the letter basically gives him advice. I keep saying basically too much today. I'm now going to stop doing that. Be opposite with a kinsman, surly with servants. So there's hints here of saying, be tough with Sir Toby. I'll be impressed by that. Be grumpy. Be miserable with your servants, order them around. And these are the ideas that this is going to impress Olivia, but it's all fake. The fortunate unhappy, there's a bit of a paradox there as well. Daylight and Champion discovers not more. This is open. I will be proud. I will read politic authors. I will baffle Sir Toby. I will wash off gross acquaintance. Shakespeare presents Malvolio as being energised by this letter. He thinks he's got all of the great prospects in life are now open to him. He thinks he's going to be able to live his dream. And this is a key line. The reason excited to this, that my lady loves me. And the important bit I missed out from this letter, why didn't I highlight the yellow stockings? I highlighted it down here. But this is all part of the comedy setting up Malvolio to be dressed ridiculously. He's going to be wearing yellow stockings. Bit of context, in Shakespeare's time, by this time the play was performed, yellow stockings were out of fashion. And to be cross-gartered, it refers to here, say ever cross-gartering of your yellow stockings, that's like a double fashion faux pas, and that would look really bad in their contemporary eyes. So it's really out of date. It looked ridiculous. So and he's going to say, "She did praise my leg being cross-gartered." He's probably misremembering something where he's taken a comment from Olivia. Maybe she was being kind, being just kind about what he was wearing. He's taking it as a sign. Oh, she did say she liked me in those yellow stockings, but it's just his own, probably just a false memory, really. And Jove of my stars be praised. Here is yet a postscript, so there's actually more. I like in the Globe Theatre version with Stephen Fry in it, he merrily skips off stage and then runs back on and says, "Oh, there's a postscript. I'm going to read this out. Let it appear in thy smiling, thy smiles becomes thee well. Therefore my presence still smile, dear my sweet, I prithee." So this is all about the setup. This is setting up Malvolio to look ridiculous. So he's going to smile, he's going to wear yellow stockings, he's going to look a real fool. He's going to embarrass him. "I will not give any part of this sport for a pension 1,000 to be paid from the Sophie." So Fabian says, you couldn't pay me enough to not be part of this, seeing Malvolio humiliated like that. Obviously Malvolio's gone now as well. Maria comes back. "Here comes my noble gull catcher." So gull, the thing about seagulls, but also gullible. It's about catching someone. He's fallen for this. So it's actually another bird reference, isn't it? We had that earlier on. Then we have the idea of Sir Toby as well. Look, he says, "Shall I?" No, I missed it. "Wilt thou set thy foot on my neck?" Sorry, I didn't highlight that bit. "Shall I play my freedom at traitorship and become thy bondslave?" So this again is crossing social boundaries as well. So remember, Maria is a servant. Sir Toby has shown his admiration for Maria, and here symbolically he's saying, "You put your foot on my neck," and that is symbolic of a slave with a master. And I think it's what happens in Robinson Crusoe, actually. That's randomly popped into my head. It's been a long time since I've read Robinson Crusoe. I'm sure that happens anyway. But anyway, Robinson Crusoe is way after this play anyway. It's not a reference to it, but it is a reference to slavery, and the idea of him putting himself beneath her again is symbolic of transcending social boundaries as well. "If you will then see the fruits of this sport, mark his first approach before my lady. He will come to her in yellow stockings, and 'tis a colour she abhors, and cross-gartered a fashion she detests." So Olivia hates both of those things. So he's going to look really, really stupid. And that's pretty much the end of that scene. So I hope you enjoyed that. I did. It's a great scene. Watch the scene yourself. It's really good. Watch different versions of it. And thank you for listening. Like, comment, subscribe, share, watch my other videos, all that good stuff. Whatever you're doing, have a great day or night. I'll see you on the next one. Goodbye.